Hi everyone, so in this video we'll go over the 2021 National 5 Maths Paper 1. So question 1, calculate the magnitude of vector D. So it would just be the magnitude of D equals 1 squared plus minus 4 squared plus 8 squared. And that would give 1 plus 16 plus 1. And then that would be 9. So the magnitude of vector D is 9. Evaluate 5, 1 over 2 minus 1, 2 over 7. Okay, so I usually do these by converting to top-heavy fractions. So the first one would be 5 times 2 plus 1 over 2. So 11 over 2 minus 7 times 1 plus 2. So that would be 9. And then divided by 7. And then we just subtract as usual. So I'm just going to multiply this one by 7 and this one by 2. So the fractions become 77 over 14 minus 18 over 14. So that would be 59 over 14. And that's in its simplest form. Expand and simplify this expression. So we just multiply as usual. So 6 times x, 6x times x, 6x squared, and then 6x times 3. And then minus 5 times x, and then minus 5 times 3. So minus 5x minus 15. And then we just do the same thing for this bracket. So 2x times 4, and then 2x times minus x. And then we just collect the like terms. 4x squared. And then this and this would give 13x. And then plus 8x is 21x. And then minus 15. Okay, so this is a circle question. So we're trying to find this angle over here. Just use a different color. And we know that this is 14. So by the radius tangent theorem, so this is a tangent, and we're told that over here. And then this part is a radius. So that means they meet at 90 degrees. And that's just the radius tangent theorem. So this would just be 90 minus 14, or we can do 180 minus 90 minus 14. So it would be 76. This would be 180 minus 76, so 104. And then since we've got an isosceles triangle, so whenever you've got a triangle inside a circle and it starts at the center, that would always be an isosceles triangle. Because if you think about it, both of these sides are radiuses, so they must be the same length. And that means this triangle is isosceles. So this angle is the same as this angle. And then to find them, we would just do 180 minus 104 over 2. So 76 over 2, that would be 38. And then both of those are 38. So that means ONM equals 38. Okay, question 5. The number of absentees at Apple Grove High School was recorded each day over a 4-week period. The results are shown below. Find the semi-interquartile range of this data. So the formula for SIQR isn't on the formula sheet, unfortunately, so you have to memorize it. And it's just IQR over 2, where IQR is just Q3 minus Q1. So Q3 is the upper quartile and Q1 is the lower quartile. So because the values are already in order, this would be, the median would be between these two numbers. So it would just be 17.5. And if it's hard to see what the median is between two numbers, by the way, you can just find the average of the numbers. So it would be 17.5, because it's not always as easy to see as with these numbers. So that would be Q2. So the median is actually Q2, and then the quartiles are Q3, Q1. And then we would just find the medians of these two data sets. So if you think about it, the median is basically over here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values to the left of the median, and then 10 values to the right of the median. So 18, 20, and so on. So we would just find the median for these data sets. So this one over here, and then this one over here, and those would be the quartiles. So the lower quartile would be somewhere, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be between these values. So it would just be 13. That's Q1. And then Q3 would be over here. So Q3 equals 23.5. So that would become 23.5 minus 13 over 2. And that gives 10.5 over 2, which is just 5.25. The diagram below shows part of the graph of y equals kx squared. Find the value of k. So whenever you've got a graph and then you've got a point on the graph, that would always satisfy the equation of the graph. So if we put x equals 2 and then y equals minus 12 into the equation, that would hold true. So that means that, let's write down the equation first. So we're just going to let y equals minus 12 and then x equals 2. So that would become 4k equals minus 12, and that gives k equals minus 3. So that would be the value of k. Solve algebraically the system of equations, and then we've got a simultaneous system of equations. So I'm just going to multiply the first equation by 3 and the second one by 2. And then we'll just add them together to cancel the d terms. So we get 15c plus 60 equals 12, and then 8c minus 60 equals 34. And then if we add the two equations, these terms would cancel, and we're left with 23c equals 46, and that gives c equals 2. And then we just plug that into one of the equations. So I'm just going to use the first one. So that becomes 5 times 2 plus 2d equals 4. So 10 plus 2d equals 4. So that becomes 2d equals 4 minus 10, so minus 6, giving d equals minus 3. Determine the nature of the roots of the function f of x equals x squared plus 4x minus 7. So we start by finding the discriminant of the function. So 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 7. So that's 16 plus 28, and that's positive. So that means there's exactly 2 distinct real roots. Okay, so we're trying to simplify this expression. So the first root 50 is just root 25, root 2. Root 45 is root 9, root 5. and then minus root 2. So that becomes 5 root 2 plus 3 root 5 minus root 2. And then 5 root 2 minus root 2 is 4 root 2, and then plus 3 root 5. And we can't combine these two terms, by the way. It's like when you've got x, 2x plus 3y, or something like that in algebra. So they're not like terms, so you can't combine them together. And you can actually split the surds differently and it would still give you the same answer. So I'll just write an alternative solution over here. So we can write root 50 as root 5, root 10, and then root 45 is root 3, root 15. And that becomes root 5, root 2, because 10 is 5 times 2. This becomes 5 times 3, so root 3, root 5, root 3, and then minus root 2. And then when you've got the same surd being multiplied, so root a times root a, that would always be a. And the reason for that is because when you combine them under the surd, you would get a times a, so it would just be root a squared, and that's obviously just a. So we can essentially just combine these two terms together. So this becomes 5, and this becomes 3. And you get the same answer as before. So we just combine the 5 root 2 and the root 2, so 4 root 2 plus 3 root 5. Okay, question 10. David works in a shop and is paid weekly. His wage is made up of a basic wage plus commission on his sales. The graph shows his wage W pounds against his sales S pounds. And then we're given the 2 points on the graph. So this is the X coordinate because that represents sales. So sales is the X axis. And then this would be the Y coordinate. Find the equation of the line in terms of W and S. Give the equation in its simplest form. So I've gone ahead and labeled the points on the graph. I've also written the gradient equation. So that's always the first step for finding the equation of a line. So y2 minus y1. So let's just label the points quickly. I'm just going to let this one be x1, y1. This is x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 is 510 minus 450. So that would be 60. And then x2 minus x1 is just 7,200 minus 6,000. So it would be 1,200. And then we can just cancel the zeros. And then we're left with 6 over 120, which is just 1 over 20. So that would be the gradient of the straight line. And then we'll just use this point for the AB coordinates. So the equation of a line is just, I'll just put that in the box. So it's y minus a equals y minus b equals mx minus a. So that's the equation of a straight line from 2 points. This is just one of the points, so I've let this one be AB. So it would be y minus b, which is 450, equals the gradient times x minus a. So x minus 6,000. So we'll just carry on over here. So that would be y minus 450 equals 1 over 20x minus 1 over 20 times 6,000. So the zeros would cancel, and then you're left with 600 over 2. So it would just be 300. And then we just move this to the other side. So we get 450 minus 300. So it would just be plus 150. And that would be the equation. I guess this wouldn't be in its simplest form though, because we've got a fraction for this term. So we can just multiply through by 20, and that would give 20y equals x plus 150 times 20. So let's just do that quickly. So it would just be 3,000. And that would be the equation. Okay, part B, calculate David's wage in a week when his sales are 1,000. Okay, so I've just realized something about the equation. So we need to write it in terms of W and S. So let's just go ahead and do that. So that would be the Y represents W, so 20W equals S plus 3,000. And then we're trying to find W when S is 1,000. So we just plug in 1,000 for S. So we get 20W equals 1,000 plus 3,000. So that would be 4,000. So that means W equals 4,000 over 20. And that becomes £200. Solve algebraically the inequation 1 minus x plus 4 is more than 2x. So that just becomes 1 minus x minus 4 is more than 2x. And then we move the x to the other side and we collect the like terms. So minus 3 is more than 3x. And that means 3x is less than minus 3. So we've just changed the order that we write the inequality in. And that becomes x is less than minus 3 over 3, which is minus 1. A band sold 2,400 tickets for their gig in Edinburgh. This was 75% of the number of tickets sold for their gig in Glasgow. Calculate the number of tickets sold for their gig in Glasgow. So this is 75% of the number of tickets sold in Glasgow. So 75%, and then that would be 100%. So the original value that we're trying to find is always 100%. So 2,400 is 75%. So we just divide by 75 to get 1%. So 1% is just 2,400 over 75. So let's just do that quickly. I'm just going to use a trick for doing this, actually. So if we multiply both numbers by 2, that would become 150. And then we can just cancel the zeros. And then we multiply by 2 again. And then we cancel the zeros. And then we just divide by 3. So that would be 32. And then we just multiply by 100 to get 100%. So 100% is 3,200. Okay, question 13. The graph of y equals a cos x plus b is shown. State the values of a and b. So a is just the amplitude of the graph. So it would just be half the peak to peak length. So that would be 5 minus 1, so that would be 4. So the amplitude is just 2. So it would just be this length, basically, for the amplitude. And then to find b, we just find how much it's been shifted upwards. So usually when you've got a 2 cos x graph, it should start over here at this point. And then it would just go something like this. So it would go down to minus 2, and then up to 2, and so on. So this has been shifted 3 units upwards. to get this graph. So the value of b would just be 3. The diagram shows a hemisphere relative to the coordinate axes. State the coordinates of b. Okay, so we're told that a is 6, 0, 0. So that would just be 6 on the x-axis. And then it doesn't move any distance up or along the y-axis. So it's just on the x-axis. So this would be half of that. So it would just be 3, 0, 0. So the radius is 3, because that length over there is 3. That's also 3. So that means this length is also 3, because that's also the radius of the hemisphere. So that would be 3. And that means that B is just 3 units below point C. And that would be along the Z axis. So this is the Z coordinate. So it would just be 3, 0, minus 3. And then part B, calculate the volume of the hemisphere. So the volume of a sphere is simply 4 over 3. So 4 over 3 pi r cubed. And you get this in the formula sheet, by the way, so you don't need to memorize it. So the volume of a hemisphere is just half of the volume of a sphere. So we start by calculating the total volume for the whole sphere. So that would be 4 over 3 pi times 3 cubed. So 3 is the radius. So that would be 27 times 4 over 3. So it would just be 4 over 3 pi times 27. I'm just going to write the 27 as 27 over 1. That's a well-known trick when you want to simplify a number times a fraction. So the 3's would cancel, and we're left with 9 times 4 times pi, so 36 pi. And then the hemisphere would just be half of the sphere's volume. So this is Vs. We'll just write that here. And then the volume of the hemisphere is just Vs over 2, and that would be 18 pi. And we're told to leave it in terms of pi, so that would be the answer. Evaluate 16 to the power of 3 over 2. So 16 to the power of 3 over 2 would just be the square root of 16 cubed. And that's from this rule, by the way. So whenever you've got indices as a fraction, it would just be the nth root of a to the power of n. So this goes to the left to give you the root, and this goes to the right to give you the power. And then when you've got a square root, so when 2 is the root that you're taking, it would just be a square root. You wouldn't write 2 over there. It's like when you write x instead of 1x. It's just a convention for square roots. And then the square root of 16 is just 4, so we get 4 to the power of 3, and that would be 64. The function f of x is defined by f of x equals 4 sine 3x. Evaluate f of 90. Okay, so f of 90 would just be 4 times sine and then 3 times 90. So it would be 4 sine 270. And we can actually use a sine graph to work out sine 270. That's why it's important to memorize your trig graphs, so sine and cosine. So the sine graph would just look something like this. That's the x-axis. And then it would go like that along the negative x-axis. This would be 180. This would be 360, and so on. So 270 is exactly halfway between 180 and 360. So you add 90 to get 270, and then you add another 90 to get 360. So 270 is exactly halfway between. So that means that the coordinates of this point on the graph would just be 270 minus 1. Because if we're exactly halfway between 180 and 360, that means we're at the lower, the trough of the graph, essentially. So we're at minus 1 on the y-axis. So that would be 270 minus 1. And that means that this value over here is just sine of the x-coordinate. So sine 270 is minus 1. And that's just a well-known fact about graphs, by the way. So whenever you've got a graph of a function, and then you've got a point on the graph, so let's just say we've got this point over here, and then let's say the graph is y equals f of x. So it's just a random function. And then let's say the point is AB. Then it would always be the case that B equals f of A. So whatever the function is, if you plug in the x coordinate, that would give you the y coordinate for any point. So if we had another point on the graph, let's say this point over here, and let's just call that PQ, then that would give f of P equals Q. So f of the x coordinate is always the y coordinate of the point. So we're just doing the same thing over here. So f of 270 is minus 1, but this function is sine x. So essentially y equals f of x equals sine x. So that's our function over here. And then it would just give you this value for sine 270. So that means that this becomes 4 times minus 1, and that's minus 4. Sketch the graph of y equals 2 times x minus 1 squared plus 4. And then we're told to label the coordinates of the turning point and also the intersection with the y-axis. Okay, so let's start by sketching a pair of axes. And we know that the turning point is just 1, 4, because the x-coordinate is always the opposite of the coordinate inside the brackets. So it would be 1, 4. You just keep this 1 the same, so it would be positive 4. So that would be over here somewhere. That's the turning point. And then it would just look something like this. And if you're not sure if it's like that or like this, by the way, there's a number of ways you can do it, but one of the ways is simply to plug in x equals 0 to get the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is found by letting x equals 0. So that would become y equals 2 times and then 0 minus 1 squared plus 4. So that would just be 1 squared. So you get 2 plus 4 equals 6. And that would be the y-intercept. So we can see that it would go like this because it has to cross 6 on the y-axis. If we got a negative y-intercept, then it would just go like that instead. The diagram below shows a design for a memory stick. The design consists of the rectangle RSTU and part of a circle center C. Calculate the length of the memory stick. So we're just trying to find the total length of the memory stick. So it would be all the way like that. And that's essentially made up of this length over here, which is the radius. And then this length over here. And then this length over here. So we know this length already, that's just 30 millimeters. So we're trying to find these two lengths. So we're told that the diameter of the circle is 20 millimeters. So that means the radius is 10 millimeters. So that would be 10. And that leaves us with just this length over here. So that would be 10 as well, because that's also a radius. So we're going from the center to the circumference of the circle. So that would be 10 millimeters. And then this length over here would just be half of 12. So that would be 6. And that would be 6 as well. So we've got a right angled triangle. And then this length is 6 millimeters. And this length is 10 millimeters. And if you know your Pythagorean triples, you can see that this is just 3, 4, 5 triple multiplied by 2. So if we scale that by a factor of 2, that would give 6, 8, 10. And we recognize the 6 and the 10. So that would just be 8. And the other way of finding this is just to use Pythagoras' theorem. So it would just be root 10 squared minus 6 squared. So I'll just call that x. And that would be root 100 minus 36, so root 64. And that would be 8. So this length over here is 8 millimeters. And then we just add up all the lengths to get the total length of the memory stick. So total length equals 30 plus 8 plus 10, and that would be 48 millimeters. Solve the equation by factorizing. Okay, so we start by multiplying the first and last coefficients, so that gives minus 30. And then we're trying to find two numbers that multiply to give minus 30, and they add to give the middle coefficient. So which two numbers multiply to give minus 30 and add to give 13? That would be minus 30. And then 15 plus minus 2 is 13. So the two numbers are 15 and minus 2. And then we just split the middle term into those numbers. So we just write that as 15x and then minus 2x. So that becomes 6x squared plus 15x minus 2x minus 5. And then we just factorize each expression separately. So 2x plus 5, and then we get minus 2x plus 5 equals 0. And then we just take out the common factor. So that's a common factor for both terms. So it would be 2x plus 5, and we're left with 3x and then minus 1. And then we just use the zero product property. So if we've got two brackets that multiply to give 0, that means that one of them has to be 0. So either 2x plus 5 equals 0, or 3x minus 1 equals 0. And that gives x equals minus 5 over 2, or 1 over 3. And those would be the solutions.